friends, welcome back to my channel. A very special welcome if you are new. My name is Leah Simpson. This is Homeschool at Heart, and today we're going to be reviewing Moving Beyond the Page, ages 11 through 13. All right, guys, so I did a review before of, I think, ages 8 to 10 on my channel a few weeks ago, and I will link that one in the description box below. But today I'm going to be reviewing the next group up, which is the 11 through 8, which is the ages 11 through 13 category for Moving Beyond the Page, or Beyond the Page as they have decided to call themselves lately. So this is the workbook for The Hobbit, and I have my copy of The Hobbit here. We already owned this one. This is not the one that the curriculum comes with if you buy the package. It comes with a smaller book that has like a really small typeset. But we already had been given this really beautiful copy for a birthday gift for my middle daughter Ellie at one point. And so we decided to go with this one. You can get this one at Barnes & Noble or on Amazon. And we love this particular version of it because it has beautiful color pictures in it, and the type isn't as small as in the one that actually comes with the curriculum. So my kids just shared this book because we got one set, and then I was like, oh, but we own this one, so one of you can use this one, and they both were like, we both want to just take turns of this. Full disclosure though, we did also end up getting an audiobook version of this story because even though my kids read at a very high reading level, the language is a little bit tedious at times for them. And so they got to listen and go through the book at the same time. I think the second, well, maybe the last third of it, I think, is where we ended up doing that. So I am going to review this workbook, though, for today. I made some tabs so that I don't just kind of meander through this video. I'll get through it pretty quickly. So Moving Beyond the Page for our charter school in Southern California at Sage Oak Charter School, they will take Moving Beyond the Page as a complete language arts curriculum. So that is part of the reason that we've gone with this. However, I don't use it as my entire language arts curriculum. I also use IEW, or Institute for Excellence in Writing, because I feel like up to this point, I haven't really felt like this was enough writing to feel like my kids were going to be prepared for high school or even maybe college if they decide to do that. So this one, though, it does have, the final project is a big writing project, and so I'll talk about that when we get there. But my kids have been doing this and IEW. So I will go over IEW at a later date. We don't do either of the things at the pacing that is recommended. We go a little bit slower so that they're not overwhelmed by both of those things together. But I do think that this program has a lot of good things to offer. So let me go in and talk about it. So it does have an introduction in the beginning, unit review. So this is everything you're going to do in each unit. It has a list of vocabulary words right up front at the beginning. And then your required books are, well, they say A Handy Guide to Writing. I don't own that, actually. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and then this workbook. So in addition, it shows what materials you're going to need for which units, and it's really not a lot. It's construction paper, cardstock, colored pencils, a journal, scissors, tape, glue, things that you probably are going to have at your house anyway. So what I do appreciate about this grade level is that the questions are really good for getting your student to think about character development and some extra things that are perhaps a little bit lacking in the younger grades. So Let me just read to you a couple of the questions right up front at the very beginning. How does Tolkien characterize Bilbo Baggins at the beginning of the chapter? So then my students answered it. My kids' answers were really funny. I haven't asked them if I could share them, so I probably won't do that. But number 2, how would you describe the dwarves to someone who has not read the book? And I think that that's a really good question, because you want to get people interested in the book, and you want to also like not assume that they have information that you have. So the way that they have to answer it is they have to think about how would I talk about this book to somebody who hasn't read it. So think about it from a book reviewer standpoint. Number 3, Gandalf says there's a lot more in him, Bilbo, than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. What do you think he means? So that's what I'm saying about the language being a little bit difficult and tedious, perhaps. But my kids are really good readers. You don't have to choose. There's a ton of books that you can choose from. So if you think that your reader is not up for The Hobbit quite yet, there's tons of different ones. And you can kind of pick and choose along the lines of where your student is. You can even go back a grade level if you want. It's not really grade level, it's like age level, but there's tons and tons of choices. It runs the whole gamut. So I think my kids are going to do, as soon as they finish the final project with this, they're moving on to Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which is going to be a little bit easier of a read for them. And they're looking forward to that. But we don't do the entire, I never buy the entire curriculum all at one time. I always just pick and choose unit studies, because we are not going to get close to finishing all of them in the school year. We maybe finish 3 of these unit studies. So I think that the full year's worth is like 8 of them, if that is any point of reference for you. So it's too much, in my opinion. The pacing that they want you to go at is insane. So good for you if you are going with their pacing and you're doing it all, but my students, I don't want them to be spending that much time doing school every day. So it would take them a long time and they'd get discouraged. So we want to keep reading light and fun for them, while at the same time still getting them all of the grammar, all of the spelling, all of the vocabulary, all of the writing, all of that stuff that they need. So let's see, what's next? Okay, so there are vocabulary cards in here that have the definition, the part of speech, whether it's or how you would use it as a synonym and how you would use it as an antonym. So these were pretty cool. I'm just kind of going through, I tabbed some things that I thought were worth mentioning. So as far as grammar goes, I get this question often. So they're working on independent clauses on this page. There is another page about dependent clauses later on, and then they learn about those, and then they go ahead and work on using them in sentences. All of the information that you need is a page ahead of the actual worksheet, or sometimes it's a little bit it's at the beginning of each of the units, though, or each, do they call it unit? I think they call them units. Each lesson. So at the beginning of each lesson is where you can find the actual directions or the actual teaching portion of each of those things. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find all of that, but it is right here in the student workbook. Moving right along. Oh, this was just a fun activity that my kids really liked. They learned about runes, and so they made some sentences and things like that drawing out the runes to make all of their little, it was like a secret code to them. So that was pretty fun. So I keep saying them, I have 2 students who are using the same curriculum for language arts because they're only 1 year apart. So I have 2 kids that are doing the exact same thing. For Moving Beyond the Page, for IEW, they're 1 year apart. Okay, so here's run-on sentences. They were supposed to do their editing marks in here, and then they rewrote them in a journal. And then I came to this part. Okay, and then there are some quizzes, at least one in here. They did the first half of it. My kids didn't do the second half apparently, so they did get to quiz themselves on like what's the difference between an independent and dependent clause, what are the 7 coordinating conjunctions, name 4 subordinating conjunctions, write an example of a compound sentence, write an example of a complex sentence. They gave a grammar error. What is it called? What 3 questions do you ask to determine whether a sentence is a fragment? So they had to go and either find the answer if they didn't know the answer, or just write in the answer, and they got them all right. All right, so that was right before the final project, which they are working on now. This was, I thought, we don't always do the final project. So my kids were like, you're making us do the final project? But I really thought that this one was good, which is why I'm going to review this. That's why I'm reviewing this particular workbook. But it's responding to the literature. And if you don't know, I am a journalism major, but I did, for part of my college career, I did English as my major. And so I am really adept at writing a response to literature, literary criticism, all of the writing things. That's my jam. And so I am very careful about making sure that my kids are good at writing and are equipped to do that in high school and beyond. So they had to do a pre-writing web, which looks like this, about how the characters changed, an important lesson that they learned, and then they got to choose another question. And Ellie chose, what was your favorite part of the book? And then she filled in the little web here. And then moving on, they have an outline in here for literary response. So to teach them how to write a literary response paper, they have a few paragraphs that they have outlined in the workbook, and then they'll go on to actually use that to write their actual paper. So for the introduction, a strong opening statement that grabs the reader's attention, author, title, and make sure you underline your title, main characters, and that's and setting, and that's 2 sentences. A brief summary of the story, which is 2 sentences, and a conclusion. Summarize the 3 ideas you will talk about in your response. And then it teaches them how to do a body paragraph, so topic, sentence, idea 1, and how to support it. So going back to the literature and making sure you have a support within the text for your idea. Idea number 2 and a support, idea number 3 and a support. Gosh, guys. And then a conclusion to that. So then you do that for a second paragraph and a third paragraph, and then there's a conclusion paragraph also. So restate the 3 ideas as discussed in your response, closing remarks, 2 sentences, and then a 1 sentence final reflection. So if you watched my previous video about Charlotte's Web, I did say that I didn't enjoy or agree with how they taught how to write their book report at the end of the video, at the end of the book. But I really do like the way that this is formatted and the way that they're teaching this for my students. I think that that is actually a really great way to be a beginner at writing literary criticism or a literary response. So then they had a few fun things at the end too that my kids have already completed. Match the character to his description. And then there's in one sentence, describe what Bilbo did in each situation. There's use the vocabulary words in sentences. And then later on, which they haven't finished this yet, but describe one example of foreshadowing found in the book, and describe one example of flashback from the book. So I really do feel like these are really good questions to really get your student thinking. So I really do highly recommend this particular guide. I love it so much. I think that this age group is such a fun age group for literature, and I can't wait to continue on and get into some more difficult texts. I love things like Jane Austen, I love Tolkien, I love all of those like British literature greats, and I can't wait to keep going with my kids on all of those things. It's such a fun thing for me. So, and then at the very end of the book, they do have all of the answers. So you can find all the answers. You don't actually have to know the answers. So that's gonna be a really great thing for most parents. Like I said, I don't have a problem with all this stuff because I learned it, I studied it all in college, but I do think that also if you haven't read the book, then you're not gonna know the answers to like their comprehension questions and all of that stuff, which they do also have several comprehension questions for each chapter. I don't think I actually said that at the beginning. So anyway, that is my overview and review of Moving Beyond the Page, ages 11 to 13. For The Hobbit, your 11-year-old might not be ready for The Hobbit, but by the time that they're 13, they probably are in most cases. But, you know, we homeschool, and so we can pace ourselves or go at our kids' own pace so that they are ready for loving the literature as they are able to get to it. So if your kid is, you know, 14 and still not ready for The Hobbit, if they're 15 and still not ready for The Hobbit, don't feel bad. That is totally fine. You don't have to go at the pace of this. In fact, we only do one activity per day. So they'll read a chapter or whatever chapters they're asking for in the lesson, and then they'll do the discussion questions. I only really make them do 3 at a time. So they'll do 3 discussion questions, and then the next day they'll go on and they'll do 1 activity. And if there's 2 activities in the lesson, then the next day they'll do the next activity, because I feel like making them read all the chapters that they're asking for, do all of the discussion questions, and then do 2 or 3 activities, that's as long as, you know, most of my kids' entire school day, most days. So I want them to continue to love literature, which they currently do, thank goodness. But I don't want to make it seem like it is work or a ton of work. Obviously, writing a paper is going to feel like work to them. They're not really that excited about that because they also write papers for IEW, but I feel like the difference is IEW is not asking them to write a literary criticism, whereas their literature program is. And so like I said, I highly recommend both programs. If your kid is in this age range, though, I do feel like this could be enough for your entire language arts program. You might want to hit another spelling program or something like that, because I didn't see a ton of actual spelling in there. And I do feel like in this digital age that we're in with like smartphones and spell check on our computers and things like that, people are not taking spelling as maybe seriously as it could be taken. But honestly, if I'm reading an email and the person has like misspelled like every other word, it's really hard to take them seriously. So I really do think that spelling is an important skill to have. So anyway, all that said, highly recommend Moving Beyond the Page, ages 11 to 13. I hope you guys will pick that up. I will leave a link in the description box to this particular set, because I really do recommend this particular workbook. I buy it from Rainbow Resources. I think it's around $20 per unit, which I think is a steal. And then usually you can get the matching book with it. Either you can buy it as a set for like $25, or you can get the book separately. You could even borrow the books mostly from the library if you wanted to go that way too. But we don't go fast enough to borrow them from the library and then get them back in the allotted time. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you in my next video. Okay, you guys, this is the part of the video where I sometimes share a funny story. I don't think I really have a funny story this week. But here's a life update. So I mostly love working with a charter school. Okay, I'm a charter mom, and our charter school is completely home-based. My kids don't go to school for any part of the week. They do take some theater classes and some music lessons with another teacher, but I am the teacher for all of the other things, except, well, I mean, there are some caveats here and there, but I hate that we have to do state testing or school testing, computer testing at all. I hate doing testing. So this is the week of testing, you guys, and my kids are doing a good job. But we did have one that literally freaked out at me on Sunday, you guys. I'm not like gonna tell you which one of my kids. If you know my family personally, you probably could guess, but I am not gonna throw her under the bus. I have 3 girls, if you're not familiar with my family, so saying her is not giving anything away. But the stress level about these tests is insane. And all I was saying is, I want you to actually try and not just click any answer for all of the, the testing, because this particular kid has heard a lot of times, which is true. It's true. The tests do not matter. Okay. I don't care what your grade is. However, that's not 100% true. I do care a little bit about what she gets on the test, only because the state test is a reflection of me more than it is of her. So I don't really care if she gets a great grade, but I want it to look like she actually tried. So that was my whole thing for her, was I need you to actually try, and I need you, because I want it to look like I am doing my job as your teacher. And she literally flipped out, guys. She literally flipped out. I hate state testing. I don't know anybody who likes it. I know lots of charter parents. I have talked to tons of them, even the teachers themselves, I don't think, who have to proctor the exam. I don't think they like it either. It just is something that we said that in the contract that we would do it, so we do it. But every single time, you guys, I'm just like, but we only have one more day. One more day. Tomorrow's our last day of state testing. In a couple of weeks, we still have to do school testing to see where we came from the beginning of the year all the way to the end, see what the progress was. I don't really care about that at all, that test. If she clicks through answers, I don't really care. But I am so proud of this kid, because even though she freaked out, she did obey, she did do her best, and she did get through both of the math portions of the test and one language arts one. The language arts one is super simple for her. She doesn't need help with that. Well, we can't help them, but she doesn't need me to coach her ahead of time for that, because that's the thing she likes. But I just wanted to let you guys know that from an influencer's point of view, not everything is perfect in my homeschool. I still have kids who need Jesus so badly and have to have pep talks about why it's not okay to freak out at your mom, and have to have consequences about stuff like that. So if you are struggling, because I can't imagine that there's anybody who's not struggling with it being this close to the end of the year, you're not alone. So I guess that was really what the message of this part of the video is that you are not alone. I see you and I'm right there with you. Parenting is hard. Homeschooling is hard. State testing is so hard. So anyway, I hope you guys are having a great week and I will see you in the next video.